Emma Collins gripped the steering wheel of her aging Honda as she wound up the clifftop road toward what could only be described as a palace. The GPS had guided her through increasingly expensive neighborhoods until she reached gates that looked like they belonged to a movie set. Her cousin Rachel had made this house-sitting gig sound simple enough. Just water the plants and check the mail, Rachel had said over coffee 3 days ago. Julian never comes back early from his business trips. The place practically runs itself.
Emma
needed the money desperately. Her freelance journalism career had hit a wall, and her savings account was running on fumes. A weekend at a billionaire's mansion in exchange for $500 seemed like a gift from heaven. The palace by the Seetha, front door alone probably cost more than Emma's annual rent. As she fumbled with the key code Rachel had given her, she wondered what kind of person lived in a place like this. The door swung open to reveal an entrance hall that took her breath away. Marble floors stretched endlessly toward floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Pacific Ocean. A spiral staircase curved upward like something from a fairy tale. Everything gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that came from having a full-time staff. Emma dropped her weekend bag and just stood there, overwhelmed. The silence felt expensive, broken only by the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below. Exploring the impossible, the kitchen could have served a restaurant. Gleaming countertops, professional-grade appliances, and a wine collection that probably cost more than Emma's car. She opened the refrigerator and found it stocked with gourmet foods she'd only seen in magazines. The living room was bigger than her entire apartment. The furniture that looked like modern art, but it was the office that truly amazed her. Wall-to-wall bookshelves, a massive desk facing the ocean, and technology she couldn't even identify. Emma found herself drawn to the books. Philosophy, science, literature, business strategy. Someone had actually read these volumes. She could tell from the worn spines and bookmarks. Whoever Julian Blackwood was, it wasn't just another rich guy collecting expensive things. The master suite discovery against her better judgment. Emma found herself climbing the spiral staircase. The master bedroom was like something from a luxury hotel, but personal touches made it feel lived in. A half-finished book on the nightstand, reading glasses folded carefully beside it. The walk-in closet was larger than most people's bedrooms. Rows of perfectly tailored suits, casual clothes that probably cost more than Emma made in a month, and shoes arranged with military precision. But what caught her attention was a framed photo tucked behind some ties. A younger version of the man she assumed was Julian stood with an older woman, both laughing at something outside the frame. The woman had kind eyes and a warm smile. His mother, perhaps. The photo was the only personal item she'd seen in the entire house. Anne. Expected guest Stima was in the kitchen making tea when she heard the front door open. Her heart stopped. Had been absolutely certain Julian wouldn't return until Monday. She grabbed her mug like a shield and crept toward the entrance hall. A man stood there, dropping a leather travel bag with the casual confidence of someone who owned everything in sight. Tall, dark hair slightly messed from travel, wearing a navy suit that fit him perfectly. When he looked up and saw her, his expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. "You're not the usual house-sitter," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. Emma felt heat creep up her neck. "I'm Rachel's cousin Emma. She asked me to fill in last minute. She said you wouldn't be back until plans changed." He moved further into the house, studying her with sharp green eyes. Rachel didn't mention she had a cousin. Rachel doesn't mention a lot of things. Emma tried to sound more confident than she felt. "I can leave if you'd prefer." The billionaire. At home, Julian Blackwood in person was nothing like Emma had imagined. She'd expected someone cold, possibly arrogant, definitely intimidating. He was intimidating, but not in the way she'd thought. He moved through his massive house like it was perfectly normal, but there was something almost lonely about it. "Yep. Don't have to leave," he said, loosening his tie. "The house is big enough for both of us. I assume Rachel told you about the basic requirements. Water plants, check mail, don't break anything expensive." Emma managed a small smile. "I think I can handle it." "Good." He paused, really looking at her for the first time. "You're a writer." It wasn't a question. Emma blinked in surprise. "How did you know that?" the way you were looking at my books earlier. I have security cameras. You didn't say it apologetically. Writers look at books differently than other people, like they're searching for something. An offer she couldn't refuse that evening, Julian insisted on ordering dinner for both of them. Emma had planned to eat the sandwich she'd packed, but found herself seated at his enormous dining table with food from a restaurant she'd never be able to afford. "So what kind of writing do you do?" Julian asked, cutting into what appeared to be the most perfect steak Emma had ever seen. "Freelance journalism mostly, or I used to. The market is pretty tough right now." Emma tried not to sound as desperate as she felt. "What's your specialty?" "I started investigative work, but lately I've been doing whatever pays the bills. Product reviews, lifestyle pieces, celebrity gossip." She couldn't hide the disappointment in her voice. Julian set down his fork and studied her. "What would you write about if money wasn't an issue?" The question caught Emma off guard. No one had asked her that in years. Real stories? People who make a difference, but never get recognition. The kind of journalism that actually matters. The midnight conversation. I couldn't sleep. The guest room was beautiful, but her mind was racing. She found herself wandering down to the kitchen for water and discovered Julian on the terrace, laptop open, working under the stars. "Do you ever stop?" she asked, stepping outside. He looked up, and in the moonlight, he seemed younger somehow. Not usually. "But lately I've been wondering what the point is." Emma sat in the chair across from him. "The point of what?" "This." He gestured at the house, the view, the life he'd built. "I've spent 15 years building companies, making money, proving I could succeed. But for what? To eat dinner alone in a house too big for one person?" The vulnerability in his voice surprised Emma. "You could change that, could I?" Julian closed his laptop and leaned back. "I've forgotten how to be around people who aren't trying to get something from me." Emma felt a strange pull in her chest. "Not everyone wants something from you, don't they?" His eyes met hers. "What do you want, Emma Collins?" The question hung in the air between them. Emma realized she was holding her breath. "I want to tell stories that matter. I want to wake up excited about my work instead of worried about paying rent. I want to feel like I'm making a difference." Julian nodded slowly. "And what would you do to get that?" "Almost anything." The words slipped out before Emma could stop. The morning after Rima woke to the smell of coffee and something that actually resembled breakfast food, she found Julian in the kitchen, standing over the stove like a normal person instead of a billionaire. "You cook?" she asked, impressed despite herself. "I eat. Cooking follows naturally." He handed her a plate of perfectly scrambled eggs. "We need to talk?" Emma's stomach dropped. "About last night? I'm sorry if I overstepped about your work." Julian sat across from her with his own plate. "I've been thinking about our conversation. I have a proposition for you." Emma set down her fork, suddenly nervous. "I'm launching a new venture. A media company focused on investigative journalism and human interest stories, the kind of reporting that actually matters." Julian's eyes were serious. "I need someone to help shape it from the ground up. Someone who understands what real journalism looks like." Emma stared at him. "You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to do the work you actually want to do, with the resources to do it right." The offer was everything Emma had dreamed of, but something held her back. "Why me? You don't even know my work." Julian pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It was an article she'd written 6 months ago about a small-town teacher who'd revolutionized education for underprivileged kids. The piece had barely been noticed. "Rachel sent me this when she told me about you filling in. This is exactly the kind of story the world needs more of."
How?
Julian set the phone down. "The question is, are you brave enough to take the chance?" Emma looked around the kitchen, at this man who'd appeared in her life like something from a dream, at the opportunity that could change everything. "What's the catch?" she asked quietly. Julian smiled, and for the first time since she'd arrived, he looked genuinely happy. "There isn't one. Just a billionaire who's tired of eating breakfast alone, and a journalist who deserves a real shot at the career she wants." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. After years of rejection and struggle, someone was finally seeing her potential. "When do I start?" she whispered. "How about Monday?" Julian reached across the table and touched her hand gently. But first let me show you what we could build together. As Emma looked into his eyes, she realized this weekend had already changed her life in ways she was only beginning to understand. Monday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Julian's home office. Emma sat across from his massive desk, still pinching herself to make sure this wasn't an elaborate dream. 3 days ago, she'd been a struggling freelancer. Now she was about to become the editorial director of Beacon Media, Julian's new journalism venture. The office space is in downtown Los Angeles, Julian explained, sliding a folder across the desk. But I thought, you might want to work from here sometimes. The view helps with creativity. Emma opened the folder to find architectural plans for a state-of-the-art newsroom, complete with research facilities and recording studios. This is incredible. How long have you been planning this? Years, actually. I've been looking for the right person to lead it. Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her face. Someone who understands that journalism isn't just about getting clicks or breaking news first. It's about truth. The intensity in his voice made Emma's pulse quicken. She'd spent so many years pitching stories to editors who only cared about controversy and sensationalism. The idea of working with someone who shared her values felt almost too good to be true. Building something right over the next few weeks. Emma found herself spending more time at Julian's estate than at her own cramped apartment. They worked side by side, developing the vision for Beacon Media, interviewing potential staff members, and planning their first investigative series. Julian was nothing like the cold, distant billionaire she'd imagined. He was brilliant, yes, and sometimes intimidatingly focused. But he also had a dry sense of humor and an unexpected gentleness. He remembered how she liked her coffee, made sure she ate lunch when she got lost in research, and listened to her. Ideas with the kind of attention she'd never experienced from an employer. "What about this story?" Emma asked one afternoon, spreading photos across the conference table they'd set up on the terrace. A nurse in Phoenix who's been providing free medical care to homeless veterans. She's been doing it for 3 years. Entirely out of her own pocket. Julian studied the images, then looked up at Emma with approval. Perfect. That's exactly the kind of story that needs to be told. How did you find her? Social media, actually. Someone posted about her in a veteran support group, but it only got 12 likes. Emma felt the familiar excitement that came with discovering a hidden gem. Her name is Patricia Reeves. She works double shifts at the hospital, then spends her weekends in the camps under the highway overpasses. "Book us flights to Phoenix," Julian said without hesitation. "We're going to meet her." The trip that changed everything. Phoenix in October was still blazing hot. But Emma barely noticed the temperature as she and Julian spent 2 days following Patricia Reeves through her extraordinary routine. The nurse was a tiny woman with enormous compassion, treating infected wounds and sharing meals with men and women society had forgotten. "Why do you do this?" Emma asked as Patricia bandaged a veteran's injured foot in the shade of a highway overpass. "Because they served our country, and now they're invisible," Patricia replied simply. "Everyone deserves to be seen." That evening, back at their hotel, Emma sat on her bed with her laptop trying to capture Patricia's story in words that would do it justice. A knock at her door interrupted her concentration. Julian stood in the hallway, still wearing the jeans and polo shirt he'd worn to the homeless camp. Seeing him dressed like a normal person instead of in his usual expensive suits had been doing strange things to Emma's heart all day. "How's the writing going?" he asked. Emma struggled to find the words. "She's amazing. But I keep thinking about what she said. It's about people being invisible." Julian stepped into her room, and Emma's breath caught. They'd been working closely for weeks, but something felt different now. Maybe it was being away from the familiar setting of his estate. Or maybe it was seeing him interact with Patricia's homeless clients with genuine respect and interest. "You're not invisible," Julian said quietly. "Not to me." The air between them shifted, charged with an electricity Emma had been trying to ignore for weeks. She stood slowly, her laptop sliding forgotten onto the bed. "Julian," she started, but he was already stepping closer. "I know this complicates things," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know you probably think this is about power or money or some billionaire fantasy, but it's not." Emma's heart was racing. "Then what is it about?" "It's about the way you light up when you talk about a story that matters." It's about how you see people like Patricia, really see them when the rest of the world looks away. Reached up to touch her face gently. It's about the fact that you make me want to be better than I thought I could be. When he kissed her, Emma felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be professional, grateful, careful. But Julian's arms around her felt like coming home to a place she'd never known she was looking for. The return home back in Los Angeles. Everything felt different. Emma moved through Julian's house with a new awareness, noticing the way he watched her work, the careful distance he maintained during business meetings, the way his eyes found hers across crowded rooms. They were professional during the day, building Beacon Media into something extraordinary. Emma hired a team of brilliant journalists who shared their vision. They launched their first series about Patricia Reeves and similar unsung heroes across the country. The response was overwhelming, but at night, when the staff had gone home and the phones stopped ringing, Emma and Julian would find each other on the terrace or in the kitchen, talking about everything and nothing until the sun came up. "I never expected this," Emma confessed one evening as they walked along the beach below Julian's house. The waves crashed rhythmically beside them, and the moon painted everything silver. "Which part?" Julian asked, taking her hand. "Any of it. The job, the success, you?" Emma stopped walking and turned to face him. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." Julian cupped her face in his hands. What if there is no other shoe? What if this is just what happiness looks like? Emma had spent so many years preparing for disappointment that the idea of lasting happiness felt foreign. But standing there with Julian, the ocean singing beside them and the future stretching out like an open road, she started to believe it might be possible. The unexpected challenge, everything was perfect until Emma's past caught up with her. 6 months after Beacon Media's launch, she received a call from her former editor at the magazine where she'd worked before everything fell apart. "Emma, darling, I have an offer you won't be able to refuse." Marcus Thompson's voice was as oily as ever. "National Geographic wants to hire you for their investigative team. Full benefits, 6-figure salary, your own expense account." Emma's hand shook as she held the phone. It was everything she'd dreamed of before she met Julian. "I'm happy where I am," she managed to say. "Come on, Emma. We both know you're just playing house with a billionaire. When he gets bored, you'll be right back where you started. But this offer won't wait forever." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of Julian's bedroom, where she'd been spending most of her nights, and stared out at the ocean. Julian found her there. At 3 a.m, "What's wrong?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Emma told him about the call, about the offer, about the fears that had been eating at her since she hung up the phone. "You think I'm going to get bored?" Julian said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Think I'm not used to good things lasting," Emma admitted. "I think maybe I should take the offer. It's safer." Julian was quiet for a long time. Then he turned her around to face him. "Do you remember what you told me that first night? About wanting to tell stories that matter?" Emma nodded. "You're doing that? We're doing that together?" "If you need the safety of a traditional job, if you need the validation of a big-name company, I understand." The generosity in his voice broke Emma's heart. He was willing to let her go because he thought it would make her happy. "What do you need?" she asked. "I need you to stay because you want to, not because you feel obligated. I need you to trust that what we've built is real." Emma looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd been too afraid to believe in. Love, partnership, a future worth fighting. "I'm staying," she whispered. "Not for the job, not for the security. Staying for you." 3 months later, Julian surprised Emma with a trip to New York City. He claimed it was for business meetings with potential investors. But Emma suspected there was more to it when he booked them into a suite at the Plaza Hotel overlooking Central Park. "This is excessive, even for you." Emma laughed as she explored the opulent rooms. "Wait until you see what I have planned for tonight," Julian replied with a mysterious smile. That evening, he took her to a private screening of a documentary. As they settled into the plush theater seats, Emma realized the film was about Patricia Reeves and the other heroes they'd featured in Beacon Media's first series. "Julian, how did you?" she started, but the opening credits began to roll. Watching their work transformed into a feature-length film was surreal. Emma had written the stories, but seeing them brought to life with stunning cinematography and emotional interviews was overwhelming. When Patricia appeared on screen, larger than life and radiating compassion, Emma felt tears streaming down her face. As the credits rolled, Julian stood and took her hand. "There's something else." He led her out of the theater and onto a rooftop. Terrace she hadn't known existed. The entire space had been transformed, with thousands of twinkling lights and a string quartet played softly in one corner. But what took Emma's breath away was the view. A massive screen had been set up overlooking the city. Projected onto it were images from every story they'd covered together. The homeless veteran Patricia had helped get back on his feet. Teacher in rural Kentucky who'd started a free lunch program. The teenage immigrant who'd invented a water purification system for his community. "These are the stories that matter," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "These are the lives we've touched together, and I want to keep doing this with you for the rest of my life." When Julian dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring box, Emma's world tilted on its axis. "The proposal, Emma Collins," Julian said, his usually confident voice trembling slightly. "You walked into my life pretending to be a house sitter, and you ended up changing everything I thought I knew about purpose and love and what it means to build something meaningful." Emma couldn't breathe. The ring in the box was stunning, but it was Julian's words that made her heart race. "You've shown me that wealth without compassion is empty. Success without love is hollow. All the money in the world means nothing if you don't have someone to share your dreams with." The string quartet had stopped playing. City lights twinkled below them like fallen stars. Everything was perfect, except for the fear that was suddenly choking Emma. "Julian, she started, but the words wouldn't come. "I know this is fast," Julian continued, rising to his feet but keeping the ring box open between them. "I know we've only known each other for 10 months, but I also know that I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life and see your face. I want to build Beacon Media into something that changes the world. I want to travel to every corner of the globe finding stories that need to be told. I want to do all of it with you." Emma stared at the ring, at this man who'd given her everything she'd ever wanted, and felt terror crash over her like a wave. "The fear I can't," Emma whispered, backing away from Julian. "I'm sorry, I can't." The joy on Julian's face crumbled into confusion and hurt. "Emma, what's wrong?" "This is all wrong," Emma said, her voice rising with panic. "This whole thing, this fairy tale life, it's not real. People like me don't get happy endings with billionaires. You get used and discarded when something better comes along." "That's not what this is," Julian said firmly. "You know that's not what this is, do I?" Emma was crying now, months of suppressed fear and insecurity pouring out. "How do I know you won't wake up in 5 years and realize you could have had anyone? Someone with a trust fund and a pedigree and connections that actually matter?" Julian set the ring box down on a nearby table and stepped toward her. "I've had anyone. I've dated socialites and models and heiresses, and none of them made me feel anything close to what I feel with you." "But what happens when the novelty wears off?" Emma demanded. "When you get tired of my secondhand clothes and my student loans, and my complete inability to navigate your world? My world?" Julian's voice was sharp now. "Emma, you are my world. You and the work we do together and the life we've built. That's what matters to me." But Emma was too far gone in her panic to hear him. She was already moving toward the door. "I need time," she said. "I need to think." "Emma, please don't run," Julian called after her. "We can figure this out together. ... She was already gone. The separation for 2 weeks. Emma avoided Julian's calls and stayed away from the Beacon Media offices. She holed up in her old apartment, surviving on takeout and self-recrimination. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from Julian, from her assistant at work, from the journalists on her team who were worried about her. Finally, Patricia Reeves called. "Honey, what are you doing?" The nurse's no-nonsense voice cut through. Emma's depression like a knife. "Patricia, how did you get this number? Your billionaire boyfriend gave it to me. He's been calling everyone we've interviewed, trying to figure out how to fix whatever went wrong between you two." Emma closed her eyes. Of course he had. "He loves you, Emma. And unless I'm completely wrong about you, you love him too." The real problem here? The real problem is that I'm terrified, Emma admitted. I'm terrified that I'm not enough for his world. I'm terrified that this is all too good to be true. Let me tell you something about fear, Patricia said gently. I was terrified the first time I went into one of those homeless camps. I was terrified I'd get hurt, terrified I wouldn't know how to help, terrified I'd make things worse. But you know what I discovered?
What?
Fear is just love wearing a disguise. You're not scared because you don't care about that man. You're scared because you care so much it feels like it might kill you. After Patricia hung up, Emma sat in her empty apartment and finally admitted the truth to herself. She wasn't running from Julian. She was running from the possibility of losing him. The return I found Julian at the Beacon Media offices at midnight. Working alone in the conference room they'd designed together. He looked up when she walked in, and the hope that flashed across his face made her heart break. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Julian set down his pen and studied her face. "For what? For running? For being a coward? For almost throwing away the best thing that's ever happened to me because I was too scared to believe in it, and now?" Julian asked quietly. Emma walked around the table and sat beside him. "Now I'm still scared. But I'm more scared of living without you than I am of taking this chance." Julian reached for her hands. "Emma, I need you to understand something. I'm not asking you to change for me, not asking you to become someone else. I fell in love with exactly who you are, even if I never fit perfectly into your world, especially. Then, my world was empty before you. Now it's full of purpose and meaning and joy. That's what you brought to my life." Emma looked around the office they'd built together, at the awards on the walls from stories that had changed lives, at the future they'd created from nothing but shared dreams and stubborn determination. "Ask me again," she whispered. Julian smiled, the same smile that had captured her heart in his kitchen almost a year ago. He pulled the ring box from his jacket pocket and opened it. "Emma Collins, will you marry me? Will you build an empire of truth and compassion with me? Will you let me love you for the rest of our lives?" This time Emma didn't hesitate. "Yes, yes to all of it." The forever after, they were married 6 months later in the garden of Julian's estate, surrounded by the people whose stories they'd told and the journalists who'd become their family. Patricia Reeves walked Emma down the aisle, and Beacon Media's entire staff served as the wedding party. Emma wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers from the garden. Julian cried when he saw her, not caring that 200 people were watching. "I used to think success was about money," Julian said during his vows. "Then I thought it was about power. But standing here with you, I finally understand what success really looks like. It looks like waking up every day excited about the work we do together. It looks like using our resources to amplify voices that need to be heard. It looks like love that makes us both better than we could ever be alone." Emma's vows were simpler. "Julian, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You gave me not just a career, but a calling. Today, I'm not just marrying the man I love. I'm choosing my partner in every adventure that matters." 5 years later, Beacon Media had won 3 Pulitzer Prizes and changed journalism forever. Emma and Julian had adopted 2 children, siblings from the foster care system whose story they'd covered early in their marriage. Every morning, Emma still woke up in the same bedroom where she'd once stood paralyzed by fear. But now, she woke up to Julian's arms around her, and their children's laughter echoing through the halls. She never did finish that house-sitting job, but she'd found something infinitely better than a weekend paycheck. She'd found a lifetime of purpose, love, and stories that mattered. And every time she told someone about how they met, Julian would smile and say, "Best house sitter I ever hired." "I never actually house sat anything," Emma would remind him. Julian would agree, pulling her close. "But you saved the house anyway. You saved everything." The end.
Since you guys have watched the entire story, I want you guys to give us your feedback, let us know how you feel, and we would really like to know if you guys would comment us and share with us how we can improve. Obviously, I feel everybody in this world knows there's room for improvement. So if you guys let us know with your feedback how we can improve, we will definitely work on that. Thank you guys for watching us. Stay connected with us. Your host, Alistair.